and welcome to another episode of Anniversary Edition. Today we are going to be talking about the classic Rear Window, which celebrates its 65th anniversary this year. As always, we're going to spoil the film, so go away and watch it first, then come back and have a little listen to what we've got to say. I'm Sophie and I'm here today with Tom.
Hello.
Hello. So, this is a 1954 mystery thriller directed by the great Alfred Hitchcock. I've written a little synopsis so we know what we're talking about. And here we go. An injured photographer confined within his apartment watches his neighbours through their rear windows as he recovers. However, he soon discovers something sinister.
Yeah. Good summing up.
Yeah, it's pretty much, I guess, what it says, what it does on the tin.
Yeah.
I guess. I'm going to start this off because last week when we were talking about, we're doing Rear Window next week, I was like, I think I've seen it, but I don't know. But how can I not have seen it? Yeah, I haven't seen it. I mean, I have now.
Yeah.
But I think I'd seen a chunk from the beginning because I remember the opening.
Right.
And I remember like certain scenes and clips, but I wonder whether, like you said, I've just maybe seen them in like the best 100 films or something like that. But I definitely think I've seen the introduction and like the first 15 minutes at least.
Right.
But I wonder as well maybe if it was something that was just on and then like I got up and left or turned over, put something else on. Because I got to a point in the film where I was like, okay, no, I haven't seen this at all.
Okay. Interesting.
But I really enjoyed this film.
I thought you might.
Because, well, we mentioned this last week that we've historically liked films that are quite contained. I love the look of this film.
Yeah.
It's a classic. It's like of its time.
Yeah.
And I like old films. And I just think it's really clever.
Yeah, it's a great film. It was one of the ones. There was a handful of Hitchcock movies that got lost for a long time, and when they found a negative, it was in a really bad way, and they had to go to quite considerable lengths to restore it.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think this one. They've done a very good job of restoring it. I think with the negative, they had like almost all of the yellow had disappeared completely, so they had to reconstitute a lot of the colour.
God, that's intense.
Yeah, and like there's no original trailer for it because
Really?
no one has it. It's been lost.
Oh my gosh, that's bizarre.
Yeah. I think it came about because it was a rights issue. Like someone owned it, and then it went on like it got. I don't know if it got bought for television or something like that. Something I seem to remember. I haven't researched this for a long time, but I know that I think it got caught in some rights issues, and then it was this, and I think The Trouble with Harry and a couple of others that they just disappeared and didn't surface for a couple of decades.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so iconic.
Yeah.
And there's so much in this that, I have seen before in parts. But it's so stylistically Hitchcock.
Yeah. I think it's one of the movies that I think defines Hitchcock. Like if someone said what is a Hitchcock film, Rear Window is it all over, because it's got suspense, it's got drama, it's got humour, it's got an astonishing, astonishingly inventive technical aspect to it. But at the same time, absolutely everything is about the story.
Yes, I mean literally, everything. The dialogue, every single word is story driven.
Yeah, and it's
or is a story driver, I should say.
Yes, and it's one of those things. So they built one of the most amazing things about this film is the set that they built. So that was built in a soundstage, and some of those buildings were essentially 5 stories high,
Okay.
and there was something like 8 to 12 fully furnished, fully functioning apartments with running water, electricity, and everything. And I think there are 32 apartments within that complex that they built.
Whoa.
And some of them are just sort of window facades.
Mm-hmm.
And they had 4 lighting setups. So they had morning, afternoon, twilight, and night.
Yeah.
And at a flick of a switch, they could change between the time of day.
I mean, and that's what's so impressive is like because it's so contained, you live your life as if you are trapped in the apartment as well.
Yes, yeah.
And that's so clever. But in order to make it visually interesting, you have to play around with that. You
Yes.
have to have different, like visibly different times of the day, because otherwise it's just it would be endlessly boring to
Yes,
look at, because
yeah.
you would just lose any kind of visual stimulus.
Yes, and like, you know, they were trying to figure out how they could create that environment, and for a long time they were like, well, we just can't do it. And somebody said to the production designer, well, all of the sound stages have basements for storing the equipment, so just take the floor out.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
L.B. Jeffries' flat, or James Stewart's flat, is actually the ground floor.
Right.
Anything below that, so the courtyard, the garden,
Yep, it's
Miss
all
Lonely Heart's apartment,
dug
and
down.
the sculptor's is in the basement.
Which makes complete sense when you think about the film, because
Yeah.
actually, you know, nearer the end, when they're kind of climbing back up the ladder, they're
Yeah.
essentially climbing out of the basement
Yes,
and up to
to
like
ground
different-
level.
to ground level,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
So
Wow.
it like, you know, that it's that sort of, you know, because the guy was just like, will Paramount let us do that? And they're like, it's Hitchcock, they'll let you do anything, because at this point he was so highly regarded, and even
Yeah.
some of his best films hadn't come yet. Mm-hmm. You know, there's
Well,
still
'cause that's
like
the thing. This is in the earlier days, right? Of Hitch, or earlier-ish.
yeah, fairly. I mean, Hitchcock started making movies in the 30s and 40s. His first American film was 1940, and that was Rebecca.
Oh, of course.
And then he done quite a few through the 40s. So he's getting into the mid 50s now. So he was really kind of hitting his stride. So I think things like the Dial M for Murder might have been around this time. You know, it was just North by Northwest, I think, was a bit later. Psycho was obviously 1960, so he was really kind of hitting his stride. I think Vertigo had been done already. So there's
okay.
you know, I can't remember what year that was, but
No,
yeah.
I
So
can't.
he was already Hitchcock by that
Right.
point.
Okay.
So yeah, he had a lot of sway.
I mean, obviously you've seen this film a lot, because we talked about this last week. Do you love this film?
Yeah.
Is this one of your favourite films?
Yeah, I think it is actually. I think it's definitely one of my favourite Hitchcocks.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think it's just such a fantastic movie that it's so perfectly executed, and I think that comes down to the way Hitchcock worked. I mean, every detail is in the script that he hands out. The camera does this, the camera does that.
Yep.
We see this, that, and the other. It's in his head, fully formed.
That's the thing. The whole film is just there.
Yeah. So, like, you know, for him, I think actually filming it was a fairly straightforward, boring process, because all the creative part of it has already been done for him. And, you know, it was the same with Psycho. Like in the script, the shots were timed as to how long they were going to last on screen. So he's already planned that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's
Whereas
just...
obviously you expect kind of a director to have like a vision, but I mean the level of detail, as you say, before filming.
Yeah.
I mean, because some I guess some directors, I don't know, I don't hang around with that many, but I guess people would say, oh, you know, sometimes things just work and you expect them to, and sometimes things don't work and you're really surprised, but actually something better like unfolds in front of you. But I feel like that was absolutely not the process.
Yeah. So I saw
with Hitchcock
a great tweet from, I think, Christopher McQuarrie. I think it was Christopher McQuarrie, who said that pre-production is the film you want to make. Production is the film you're hoping you're making. Mm-hmm. And post-production is the film you've made.
Okay.
Right? And like, you know, from directing myself, it's like you go in with a plan, but you have to be adaptable. Yeah. There are things you're going to find that don't work for whatever reason. There are going to be technical issues to overcome for whatever reason. You know, you're gonna encounter problems because filmmaking is problem solving essentially all the time. Mm-hmm. But when you hear about how Hitchcock went about on his sets and how he had everything at his command, like he just knew instinctively what he wanted, and he was so dead set. Mm-hmm. And I heard somewhere that, you know, he didn't actually communicate a lot with his actors and he just tended to cast people who would know what he wanted. So it was, you know, I think like with James Stewart and stuff like that, he might just say, oh, this scene's getting a bit tired, and that just meant that James Stewart had to pick the pace up a little bit.
Right.
So it's stuff like that. So I just marvel at a lot of his films, but for me, this one is right up there with North by Northwest and Psycho. Yeah. And
it's just gripping. Like, as someone who thought they saw it because it's so iconic and classic, and like I said, I'm sure I saw bits of it, but actually sitting and watching it like all the way through, I did have to pause and re-pick this up in terms of fitting it in when I was watching it, but I was reluctant because I didn't want to turn it off. I didn't want to stop watching it because you are so gripped. Yeah.
And for a movie that's essentially just a dude in a room looking out a window.
Well, exactly. Like, it sounds boring as sin. I mean, you know, and nothing happens. Yeah. You don't see anything.
No, it's just their speculation and their fevered imaginations, really, which is what you think.
I was kind of assuming that because of the way it's done and because it's so uncertain, it's all speculation, and you kind of think, oh no, he's become obsessive. Like, it's not, you know, there's a perfectly logical explanation for what has happened. Yeah. And the fact that she isn't there. And when he arrives and he's so sinister, you think, no, it can't be that easy. Like, he's going to explain it away and you're going to realise that, you know, the two of them have made a massive mistake, that he's completely innocent, and then his wife's going to turn up. And then you're like, oh, no, he did it. Yeah. And it's so good because even though you think you know, and you're with them all the way, you have this weird, like, you know, logical part of your brain. And as a viewer, you're like, no, you know, he can't have. Like, nothing like that happened.
Well, the genius of it is, so, you know, so James Stewart character, L.B. Jeffries, you're with him all the time. You know what he knows all the way until he falls asleep. Yes. And we see Thorwald take his, who he presumed to be his wife out of their apartment. And from that point on, we know something that he doesn't know. And that makes us think, you're getting obsessive now. You've got it wrong.
She's gone on holiday. She's staying with family. She's ill, and she needs to be looked after somewhere else.
So you're kind of following that train of thought, and then they start to go along there. Then they when he finds out that she left,
because the detective kind of explains it away, because he looks into it and he explains it away with the knowledge that we have as the audience member, and we're like, okay. So, you know, they are becoming obsessive.
Yeah. And that kind of keeps going, and you think, okay, right, fair enough. But then the moment when the dog turns up dead, and all of the neighbours are looking out of the windows, and there's a big commotion about this dog that's died, and it all kind of dies down a bit. And James Stewart says, only one person didn't come to their window. Yeah, and they look across. And it's a completely black apartment, and all you see the little cigarette.
Oh, it's genius.
And I was just, and that's the moment you know, and they know he did it.
Yeah, because you're like, well, he must have, because he's. Yeah. Why would he not come out and look at the dog?
Yeah.
Because if he was completely innocent, he would have come out and looked and been like, what's the commotion about?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no way you'd sit there with your neighbours like screaming and yelling.
Exactly.
And not come at least to your window.
Because he knows why the dog is dead.
Yeah.
Because he killed it. Yeah. So, I think that's again Hitchcock's genius in manipulating the characters and the audience.
And the audience, yeah.
And the relationship between the two by having either putting you in a position with L.B. Jeffries, so you get attached to him as your eyes in the film, but then giving you that extra knowledge that he doesn't know.
Is that twice that happens?
No, I think it's just once, because then that makes you doubt him.
Yes, and then it's only that just because he's like turned around, he doesn't realise he's left his apartment. It's
he falls asleep, isn't it? And then you get brought back together again with him for the end as the audience. I think it's just it's the genius of Hitchcock's manipulation. I think,
and it's such an iconic. I mean, you associate Hitchcock, or you think about Hitchcock, and you just associate like suspense.
Yes.
Well, I do anyway. This is just so typical.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before. Like, I loved The Third Man. Loved The Third Man. And it's because I think it's really similar in that you have this weird interplay with, you're on side with the protagonist.
Yeah.
You don't have all the information. There's this other character who you don't really know how to read. And I mean, it's different in the films, but it's a similar kind of setup, and you don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, and I think it's so clever. And I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but like one of my favourite kind of horror films is the original black and white The Haunting.
Yes, yeah.
And I love it because it's all suggestion and suspense and interplay between people who don't or who can't trust each other because they haven't got all the information. And there's no like crazy blood and guts and gore, and there's nothing fantastical about it. It's just great acting, great direction, great stories, and it's very calm. And there's something so eerie about watching like a thriller. I mean, I suppose that's the very nature of a thriller, but watching a film where you are on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
And you are absolutely with this film.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of this. I'm really glad that we got to watch this.
Yeah.
I was trying to think like, favorite parts of the film, but I've really struggled to kind of pick one or two or anything.
It's because it feels like just one long scene. Because you don't move, you don't leave L.B. Jeffries' apartment until literally you don't leave the apartment until L.B. Jeffries leaves the apartment.
Yeah, you don't.
And so it just feels like that's why, like, for me, picking out the moment of the dog dying, and that's the only way I can pick out that moment, because that's the real shift. But yeah, it's just it's so consistently there all the way through.
I mean, we talked about this a bit, I guess, in Speed, because we were trying to figure out like what's our kind of favourite moment, favourite scene, and we were like, well, it kind of feels like there's only 3 scenes, because you've got the lift shaft at the beginning, then you've got the bus, and then you've got the train at the end, and it's like you say, it's the same in this, and it's just one. And trying to pick out like any kind of favourite scene of anything is just too difficult.
Yeah.
But I loved the fact that whilst you've got this kind of like murder mystery, did he, didn't he, thriller going on, you also get to see, you kind of get teased with like a glimpse into his relationship by the 2 dinners that she arrives for, and then as soon as she knows or she feels that he's right, everything in their relationship like shifts as well. And I loved that I loved watching him actually fall in love with her. Yes,
because that's the thing. It's very clear. It's very clear from the beginning that she's in love with him.
Yes. I mean, you're literally told it's his what's her name?
The nurse.
She says,
Stella.
Stella, she loves you with every every bone in her body.
Yeah, and he's. I mean, you learn everything you need to know about him in that opening shot, where you see the broken leg, the broken camera.
Yeah.
And like it literally lays out his entire character in a single
Absolutely.
camera move.
And how clever is that?
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So you know he's a man of action. You know that he hates being cooped up. He doesn't like being tied down.
Yeah.
And even though you've got Grace Kelly being absolutely
What an entrance.
glamorous and stunning as Grace Kelly is,
Yeah.
like you're just like, well, why doesn't he want to settle down? And it's because he can't. It's not in his nature. And you can see the moment he realises he's in love with her.
Yeah.
And it's the moment she comes back into the apartment absolutely brimming with excitement because she's involved in an adventure.
Yeah.
And it's like, she's seen my world now.
Yes.
She understands my adrenaline rush.
And that's the thing, because they're like these two people who should be together because they do love each other, but he doesn't love her the way that he should.
Yeah.
But they just don't understand each other.
Yes.
Because he can't articulate, he can't explain properly, and she can't quite grasp the fact that he's saying, I can't live here and do nothing and be tied down. And then it's that acknowledgement and she doesn't even realise she understands it now.
Yeah.
Because she's so caught up in the story of it.
Yeah.
You know, and she's just, I think it's when she comes, like you say, when she comes back, and for me, it was kind of watching her change slowly as she becomes more intrigued by the story, because she starts to, it's like a tease. She starts to understand why he gets so hooked and why he's so hooked on his job. And when she's warming the brandy, it's because she's come back, and she's come back, or when, I think that is it. And she's like, I can't remember what she says, but she's like, I can't leave. Basically, I have to know what's going on now. And then that adrenaline rush when she like rushes back in and she's like, oh my goodness. And he's just like, he's so, proud's the wrong word, but he's so captivated by her because she is captivated by the thing that he loves, and that's what makes him like be able to love her. It's so clever.
It then gets consolidated when she goes out for a second time with Stella. They go to look. They go to try and dig up what they think might be hidden in the garden, not knowing what it might be. They assume it could be the murder weapons.
Yeah.
And Lisa takes the rash decision to climb up the fire escape and into his apartment, and then it's just and then Stella comes back, and you see the moment when Thorwald comes back.
Yeah.
And that's when LB he's scared for Lisa,
because he doesn't want to lose her.
And he I think so. He's seen that the adrenaline rush she's getting means that they can adventure together. They can share some common ground.
Yeah.
And then that's the moment where he realizes that he is in love and he can't lose her.
Yeah. It's so good because you have all of that going on, but it doesn't take away from the classic like thriller of the film.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so good. I found it fascinating. And I'm going to geek out on Grace Kelly here because she's just great. I mean, what an entrance to making a film.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it a dream sequence? Because it's the way it's lit when her first scene. It looks like he's dreaming about her.
Yeah.
But she's just, the ease of the acting is incredible. Like, you just don't, obviously it's Grace Kelly because she's so iconic. It's Grace Kelly. It's like watching Audrey Hepburn or Marilyn Monroe. Like, they're so iconic that they are who they are on screen. But the acting is so, I mean, it's old school in its, it's classic. It's a film of its time, but everything is so natural. And like, I think there's a couple of times when Grace Kelly, but also I think James Stewart does it a couple of times where it's almost like they forget their lines.
Right.
But it's so naturally, they just carry on because that's what you did. And it's like, oh, that would happen in real life. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times on this podcast did we say the wrong thing and go, oh, no, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
And you carry
yeah.
on. And it's that kind of, or you stutter over a word because you can't,
Yeah.
it just doesn't come out quite right.
James Stewart's kind of legendary for that sort of delivery anyway.
Yeah.
He had that kind of slurry, stuttery kind of.
Well, when he's like, oh, the thing on the box, the thing on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it because you couldn't remember your line, or is it just because that's what was written? But it's so natural. It's how you would, because they're in a panic. They're all flustery, and they're like, oh no, the thing on the the yellow box, get me the thing.
Yeah.
Because that is what you would do. It's what you would say. And I loved those little bits that are in there because it just feels so natural.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, because like I'm a bit of a Dior girl, and the dress that she's in, I don't know if it's Dior, but the first dress,
I think a lot of them were designed specifically for the film.
That doesn't surprise me.
Apparently, Hitchcock, ever the man of immense detail, worked incredibly closely with the costume designers to get her look absolutely right. He was very precise about that sort of stuff. I don't know if it was like based on an outfit already, or whether they collaborated or something like that.
I'm not sure. I'm having a little look because I'm nosy.
But I know that like he had a very close relationship with the costumier and the costume department because it was so integral and so important for her character specifically.
Oh no, it wasn't Dior.
No.
So sorry, everybody.
No,
it was costume designer Edith Head.
Yeah. See, I think it was, but she's obviously, that those clothes and that dress have got that from. They've used that as source material, if you like. They've done their research and.
I mean, her outfits are just amazing. And I loved the ending as well, where he's fallen asleep and she's reading a book about like
the Himalayas. Yeah.
And then she picks up Harper's Bazaar. Like, yes, Grace Kelly.
Yeah, that's the thing. Where you see that, she's in trousers. Mm-hmm. She's not in a skirt at that point. So she's obviously changed.
And that's the thing. It's as subtle as that.
Yeah.
And it's so clever. Yeah. Like every detail.
But what I like is you're right. She then picks up Harper's Bazaar because she knows he's asleep, and she can just be like, "Oh, I'm still me."
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. She hasn't changed for him.
No.
All that's happened is that they, like you said, they found common ground that they can both be excited, or she can be excited about his life and understand his life a bit more.
Yeah.
And. Yeah, I thought it was so clever. I mean, the detail in costume. I mean, that's why costume is important, and makeup and set design. And I suppose because I kind of have come more from a background in theatre, but like there's so much detail in set design because everything has to be so precise, and obviously it is in film as well, but I don't think you notice it as much in films that aren't as contained.
Yes.
Because the odd coffee shop here and there, it's more throwaway. Whereas when you have because it is a problem of containment, when you have a problem like that, I mean, it's an opportunity in other ways, but everything has to be perfect. Like there can't be a thing out of place.
No.
And I love the detail of that, and I love that it's reflected in every inch of the film.
Yeah.
It's so impressive to just get lost in.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'm just going to try and find Grace Kelly Dior dresses because now I'm annoyed that I have that I've got myself confused about the dresses. Oh no, I've not. Okay. Oh wait, no, it is. Is it a Dior dress?
I mean,
it's
it
come
is.
up as.
I think that's just Grace Kelly dresses.
I think
that's doing
it's
that.
just me too. I mean, if anybody knows, then do let me know because
I think it's very much likely to be inspired by, and then the costume department, because they wouldn't have bought the actual. They would have made.
Oh no! Well, I think it's. Is it Dietrich? There's a famous quote where she's like, on film sets, she only wore Dior.
Right.
And so she says, it's some famous line like, no Dior, no Dietrich. And I'm like, oh, it's brilliant. But yeah, I don't think Grace Kelly was quite as irritating and specific as that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I would struggle to fault anything, I think.
Yeah.
Apart from, there's obviously the ending where people are kind of running because it's been restored, which now makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of sped up a little, and it's
I think that's probably just a case of they needed to move the pace along a bit and just give it a bit more urgency, and that's something they did quite a bit back then, and I don't think it was as apparent and as jarring as it looks now.
Exactly, I don't think it was. And obviously when he falls out the window, that's done differently and will be done differently today.
That's a composited effect shot, really. They would have done it differently. So there's a few little moments of camera trickery that don't necessarily hold up. I would agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, is there anything that you can pick to fault with this?
No, because it's
me neither.
It's just it just is. It's so gripping throughout. You learn so much about the characters effortlessly.
Yeah.
The situation unfolds brilliantly. Every single minor character is perfect. You know so much about them, yet you barely hear them talk, if at all. Everything you see of them makes perfect sense. Apparently Hitchcock never left L.B. Jeffries' apartment on set.
Oh, really?
And all of the people in the other apartments had earpieces. And he could talk to each individual person, but they couldn't talk back.
God, that's so interesting.
To the point where one day they were going to shoot the scene where the couple are outside, the couple that put their mattress outside and go to sleep on the thing. They were filming that bit, and it was going to rain, and apparently Hitchcock went on his little radio to the woman who played the dancer, Miss Torso, and said, just watch this, and then he spoke to the guy of the couple.
Yep.
Then he spoke to the woman of the couple.
Okay.
And he was like, it's going to start raining, and I want you to grab the mattress and pull it in through the window.
Yep.
But he told the guy to go through one window and the woman to go through the other window.
Oh, that's so clever.
Just for his own amusement. So they end up having this argument.
Natural.
Because they both think they're doing what they're told.
And they've been told by the director.
And it ends up with the woman dragging the guy and the guy falling through the window in this little comedy moment.
Oh, that's so clever.
That's just Hitchcock playing a prank on his actors for his own amusement. But
that actually looks utterly incredible and completely believable, because also in that situation you would be like, no, like my window's closer, come in, like because obviously you've been told by a director, but you would just be like, get off the mattress and let me put this in the thing, like move.
Yeah, so it's just
that's brilliant.
Stuff like that I think is brilliant, and like, you know, you feel for Miss Lonely Heart.
Oh, I know her story, and that's the thing. Everybody has a storyline.
Yeah, and then like there's the newlyweds, and there's the musician who's struggling to write a song that then becomes a hit,
and then I love the ending with those two. I was like, oh, that's so nice. And I just, the only thing I didn't like the ballerina, like her fake rehearsing in her room. That annoyed me.
Right. Okay.
But only because I'm just like, oh, that. It's very of its style, though. Of its time. Sorry.
She wasn't a dancer. She was specifically picked to be an amateur, and she was specifically told to make up her own routines to the music.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's supposed to be someone who's trying to make it and break it.
Okay, got you.
And that's why, like, all the guys are swanning around her.
Yes.
And they're all supposed to be like people that are gonna give her an opportunity.
Yeah.
But think it's more than that, which she rebuffs, and then the payoff to that is her very short boyfriend comes back from the army.
I love that, but I love the line from Grace Kelly as well, from her character, when she when she has got the three guys all round and they're all kind of like rallying around her, and Grace Kelly's character, Lisa, says, "Oh, you know, she doesn't love any of them. They're just there." Because he said, I think, he says something like, "Oh, I would imagine it looks a lot like your apartment."
Right.
And she's like, "No," because obviously the guy she loves is here. And she can tell. She's like, "No, she doesn't love any of those men. They're just there."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's brilliant. And the fact that you get the resolution at the end to each of the kind of the characters, but it's so soft, it's so subtle. And yeah, you get just enough information about them.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I can't think of any, like, I would recommend to everybody I know to see this film.
Yeah, I think
it's such a classic.
It's just quality filmmaking, and I think it's a movie that if you've got no interest in filmmaking, you'd enjoy it. If you love the process of filmmaking, there's so much to learn and to look at and to get from it.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
If nothing else,
it's just a good thriller.
A great way to be entertained by a great movie.
That's the key to pretty much all of Hitchcock movies, is that the stories are utterly captivating, and he executed them in such a way that it's technically brilliant.
Yeah. It's amazing.
You know, he was way ahead of his time.
Oh my goodness. Even just in the opening titles, you've got such like a tour of the set, but it's beautiful, but it's intriguing. It's simple, but it's absolutely not simple.
Yeah.
It's just so clever. Like I could watch that film again and again.
Yeah.
And like never get bored.
Yeah.
And I love the way that they play around with the lighting as well. Because I mean, I didn't, when we started doing this podcast, like I didn't watch films like that.
No.
You know, I did an English lit degree, and if you ask me to, the way you watch a film is probably the way I read books.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to see so much more than just a film when I watch a film, and I love that. But when you watch great films like this, there is so much to see and so much to get excited by.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of annoying because when you watch like mediocre films, you're like, oh,
yeah,
it's a bit rubbish, isn't it?
Like, oh, they could have done this, or they could have done that.
And actually, like, I mean, I'm not going to taint all modern films because I think that's really unkind, but you don't get great films like this, generally speaking, nowadays.
Yeah, I think
they're few. I think the problem is because there's so many more films.
Yeah,
you have to dig through to find them.
I think one of my big reasonings, I think, is that you get super low budget movies and you get super high budget movies, and we've lost the middle ground.
Yes,
and that's often where great films sat.
Absolutely,
because, like I said before, movies are problem solving. And you're either problem solving to such a huge degree on a low budget, sometimes things get lost, or it's just like, you have to compromise a bit too far. That's not always the case. There's some amazing super low budget movies. Or the budget's so high, you just fix it with money, or you fix it with effects, or you fix it with whatever.
Yeah.
And you lose it. And it was the mid-budget movies which tended to rely more on story, that tended to be the great one. I think. I mean, I'm obviously generalising massively.
Well, yeah, but if you apply that and you think, okay, well, if you made this film now and didn't use, and made it kind of in the same way, you wouldn't be looking at the same type of money that you'd be spending on like Avengers. I mean, nowhere near.
No.
You might have a little bit of VFX here and there.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, you'd have a blue screen behind the apartments, so you could change or a digital screen that you could change the day and all that kind of stuff. The lighting would be easier now because of
so you possibly even save money on lighting.
Yeah, but would they go to the lengths of building that extravagant set, or would you cut it up into and shoot things and composite them together.
Yeah.
And like,
I
so
mean,
there's,
who knows?
yeah,
But you
it's
still wouldn't be spending anything like
no,
big budget
no,
film
no,
now.
no, not at
And
all.
so it would still be, or still, I don't know if it was then, sorry, nowadays, this would be like a middle of the ground
Yeah, yeah,
budget, which,
yeah,
as you say, is kind of not made
yeah,
as often because
yeah,
it's either like you've got money, or you've got no money.
yeah, yeah. And you know, I think I'm trying to think of movies where I've gone, oh, that was really, really good, like really great films recently.
Yeah, so am I, but I actually can't think of any. I mean, I don't
No,
go to the cinema that much anymore
no,
because it's just
it's too
ridiculously
expensive,
expensive.
way too expensive.
But the last thing I saw in the cinema, I think, was Aladdin, the live
Yeah,
action, which I really enjoyed, and it's a great film as a live action Disney film. I would have to watch it again to think about whether I thought it was a great film.
well,
I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
don't think it quite compares to
No,
Hitchcock.
no,
um, I just, I'm, I'm really struggling.
yeah,
I mean, I actually can't think of anything.
no. I think it's, you know, and we're a lot of that sort of budget, that story really driven movie genre, like, you know, where all these kind of classics sits, have moved to television because we have things
Yeah.
like The Wire and Deadwood and, you know, Breaking Bad and all of that kind of stuff that kind of sits where this used to, I think.
Yeah, I
So,
think you're
you
probably
know,
right. And I think it offers, like, you know, the likes of sort of Netflix originals and Amazon Prime originals. I think it offers an opportunity to to revisit storytelling
yeah, yeah,
in a way that I think people's expectations of modern film doesn't let you do because
yeah,
people now, I feel like, I don't know if it's true because I don't think it is in my opinion, but I think there is a perception that audiences want all bells and whistles
yeah,
on every film, and I don't think that's true anymore. I've never thought that that's true, but I think we're getting so caught up in it,
yeah.
and I think maybe that's where storytelling's moved to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also, you know, we people making these movies are few and far between now, if there are any that are of the standard of Hitchcock. You know,
Yeah,
I think
you're right.
there are filmmakers out there who are excellent, and they're excellent at different things. They're very good at certain aspects of filmmaking. But it's finding the complete package.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
rare,
Yeah.
very, very rare.
Well, it's the same in theatre because obviously, you know, I used to do a lot of like amateur dramatics, but musical theatre stuff, and finding someone who is equally split in terms of stage talent as like a triple threat, you know,
Yeah.
with dancing, singing, and acting, is few and far between. People have a specialism, and I think with film, because of technology, actually, I think there are so many specialisms that actually, as a director, you can't possibly be expected to understand the full complexities of what's available within virtual effects.
Yes.
So you have to have specialists. And actually that means that the whole kind of filmmaking process becomes compartmentalized
Yeah.
and becomes much, much more of like a separate process. Because, I mean, you know, you think about nowadays of the big films, they've got people across the world working remotely on different parts of the project. There's no
Yeah.
consistency across the film in terms of one person
Yeah.
actually physically understanding and working on every element.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to things like, you know, there's this whole concept of the auteur, like this, you know, and Hitchcock's always used as the prime example of that, and people often use Martin Scorsese as well, although I
Yeah.
think that's to a lesser degree. But I think, you know, if you think about, like you say, the time period in which movies like this were made, all of pre-production had to be done written on paper. Like you had a paper trail of everything, which is time consuming.
Yeah.
Which means that everything has to be figured out, put down on paper, and it's got to be done in the most efficient way because it takes time to do that. Whereas now, with electronic communication, it's a lot easier for conversations to happen
When you get
between
back and
people.
forth.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then you start like, oh, I'm just casually chatting via WhatsApp with my DOP, but I'm in an email chain with a producer and and you know the gaffer or whatever, and it's like you're not everybody's always necessarily going to get the right chain of communication, and I think that you know, going back to that kind of stuff can make a difference. Sorry, there's a massive thunderstorm happening outside.
We're just casually recording in a thunderstorm.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I like I say, I think there are periods of time when movies just like you can't make movies like that like Rear Window now. I think it'd be very different, and I don't think we're going to see the likes of a Hitchcock again. I think there's going to be brilliant filmmakers to come. I think there are great filmmakers around now, and I think there'll be inventive movies. But
no, I think you're right, Tom.
Yeah, like for someone to have a career like Hitchcock, I think would be really, really unlikely.
Yeah, I mean it's true of most careers, I guess, within the film industry. It's true of actors, I suppose, now as well. Oh, sorry, folks.
That is like proper like sound effects CD thunderstorm going on there.
Just trying out our sound effects.
Yeah, and we've got to walk in that.
Yeah, no. Track with all the kit.
Uh-oh.
Whoop, whoop. It's fine.
It's fine.
So, I mean, I don't even have anything else to say. I couldn't pick a favourite character because I think I love Stella.
Yes,
her
I put her down.
one-liners are
so
spectacular.
I love how, like, she's a nurse. There's lots of stuff she's really blunt and matter of fact about. It's like, oh, maybe he cut her up with this, that, and the other, and all that kind of stuff. And I love the payoff to that at the end. Is when they're in the courtyard and the cop comes up and she's like, "Did you dig up did you find anything in the flower bed?" And he said, "No, but we did find like the head in the hat box in the cupboard." And he's like, "Want to see?"
Yeah.
And she's just like disgusted but also intrigued.
Yeah,
and it's
she's
just
like, "No, I don't want to be involved in it." And then she looks back and it's like, "Oh, it's brilliant. She's great."
She is really cool. Yeah.
Jeffries and Lisa are great. I
Yes.
think Grace Kelly and James Stewart put in incredible performances.
There's great chemistry between them.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I love the kind of the calm, like you're losing your mind vibe of the police officer, the detective. I'm like, yes. Because he's just like, oh, did you really, am I really calling you whilst I'm at dinner? And it's like, oh, did I come over to talk about this? Really?
Yeah. And
but,
I love
brilliant.
the fact that he's quite happy for them to just blabber and blabber and blabber and blabber, and then he'll just be like, "Yes, I've just been told I had a phone call that that's not the case." So he's quite happy for them to just get it out of their systems, just letting it run its course, and
and then he's like, "Calm down, kids."
Yeah.
You know.
But I love the fact that as soon as there's an element of danger, he's right there.
He's there.
Like he doesn't doubt it.
He's really dependable in that way.
Yes. And I think that comes back down to
Hitchcock having a chat with us.
I know, it's just crazy.
Joining in.
I think it comes down to the fact that they were, you know, we find out that they were in the war together, LB and the detective. The detective flew the planes and James Stewart took the reconnaissance photos. So it's like, that's why he's there for him. Yeah. Because they've got that bond.
Camaraderie, absolutely.
Like there's a bit where he says, "Oh, can't we just talk about the war and pretend it was the good old days?" Yeah. Like, and that's such a poignant turn of phrase.
Well, because, I mean, you know, I'm trying to think when this was actually set, but it was of its time,
yes,
right?
it's set in the 50s. Yeah.
So people were still having conversations about that. Like, you know, really...
Yeah, I mean, it's still less than 10 years from the end of the war. Yeah. So, you know, it's...
really important, you know, conversations that... And real life experiences that would have felt so recent. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with a husband killing his wife. Yeah. I mean, it is really poignant. Yeah. But I loved all of the performances. I loved all of the characters. Yeah. I thought it was spot on.
It is brilliant. Do you know? We keep stopping because of this thunder, and the torrential rain that's going on outside, and I just know that when I listen back to this and edit it, there'll be nothing.
Yeah.
like we'll just be like,
We'll be like,
thunder, and
"Oh,
there'll just be
thunder."
silence.
And it's like, no, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that's a massive thumbs up from us. Please, everybody always watch this film. Next week, we are going to be talking about Pulp Fiction next week. So definitely a different type of film. Still a classic, I think.
Yeah.
It's pretty up there for people.
Yeah.
I only first saw this last year? Earlier this year?
Jesus, that is horrendous. Sorry, this storm is getting crazy.
Raging.
Yeah, it was earlier this year, maybe?
I don't really remember. It was when I went up... Oh, maybe, because it was the last time I went up to Manchester.
I think it was like January this year.
February, yeah.
Yeah.
So I watched this then in, Feb this year.
Yeah.
For the very first time. Obviously, again, I've definitely seen bits of it because I'm a huge dance fan. I watched Strictly Come Dancing when Jay from the band, can't remember, Jane Aliona did the jive to this, the iconic the dance scene in this,
the Chuck Berry song, You Never Can Tell,
and it was great. So I've seen bits of it, and I've seen clips of like John Travolta, but this film's intense.
Yeah.
And I love the way it's told. I love the fact that you get different perspectives. The chronology is off. Like it's just, I find it really enjoyable to watch. So I'm very excited to watch this again.
Yeah.
And to see because I'm sure there's going to be more that I will pick up on that I missed first time round.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it quite a few times. So yeah, but it's something I haven't watched for quite a while.
It's not your kind of pick up and just watch film.
No, it's 2.5. I've seen it's 2.5 hours, and that's now Pulp Fiction is my measurement for 2.5 hours. Like if I'm like, how long do I have to do something, or like how long is something? Yeah. If it's 2.5 hours, I'm like, it's the same length as Pulp Fiction. Like, it's my point. It's my point of reference, and it's just always like, oh wow, that's just my point of reference.
That's a Pulp Fiction.
Exactly. Yeah,
right, okay,
or I could watch Pulp Fiction in the time it'll take me to do X, Y, or Z, right? So that's what I use it as my frame of reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah,
I'd be interested to talk about. It'd be good to talk about it. We haven't done Tarantino yet.
Yeah, we haven't. And I mean, again, another classic. Like movie maker.
Yes.
But so stylistically different.
Yeah, and probably I would argue more controversial than Hitchcock.
Definitely.
But comes from the same sort of movie lover, movie maker kind of vein.
Definitely.
I don't know whether you could class Tarantino as an auteur, potentially in some respects because of
that's probably
fair. When you're watching a Tarantino movie.
Oh my god, yeah, you do.
So yeah, I guess that'll be interesting to chat about and delve into.
I think the fact that for me it's something that kind of passed me by.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to chat about that a bit more.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you would have been quite young when it came out.
When it came out, yeah.
Because I watched it when it first came out. I think I saw it the week it came out on VHS.
Oh, okay.
And so in the UK, that would have been probably around 95.
Yeah, something like that.
So I would have been 15.
Oh yeah, and I would have been little.
Yeah. So yeah. I saw it when it was first around.
Well, I think as well because like my parents aren't massive film buffs. Like they like classic films, but I mean they never. I don't think they probably would have watched this really. It's not like their type of film, so like it wouldn't have been on for me to kind of
I got my mum to watch it.
Oh really?
Yeah, because this was around the time when I was starting to get into film, and
okay, so you wanted to share it,
and like and like if I really liked something, my mum would ask me why, and I would be like, okay, watch it because of X, Y, or Z, whatever like this, and she was just like, I'm not interested in watching this. And I went, John Travolta does a dance sequence. And she was like, oh, I'll watch that then. Because she likes
Probably
dancing.
Probably not the type of dancing that she was expecting.
She was very disappointed in the dance sequence. But laughed her head off when Marvin got shot in the face. So, you know.
Wow. I feel like we should have your mum on next week to join us in our chat.
Yeah. I think actually her favourite bit in the film is when it's during the Bonnie situation and they're washing their hands in the sink and John Travolta dries his and hands Samuel L. Jackson the blood-soaked flannel.
Oh, God, yeah.
And he's like, what are you doing? He said, I'm drying my hands. He said, we were supposed to wash them first. And that line made my mum roar with laughter.
That's funny. I mean, it's a funny film.
It is.
It's like, it's harrowing in places, though. But I'm intrigued because what you just said about telling your mum or asking your mum to watch it. Why did you ask her to watch this? Obviously, you got her to watch it by saying, "Oh, John Travolta does dance." But you know, if you said to her, you have to watch this film because.
Oh.
Can you think why? Or no, what would you say to someone now? I guess.
I think it was at that time because I'd never seen anything like it.
Oh, okay. I mean, to be fair,
because don't forget, I was only 15 at the time. Technically, I shouldn't have watched it at all.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another story which I'll tell next week as to how I ended up watching it before my mum. But yeah, like because I think it's even if you look at Reservoir Dogs, which was the movie Tarantino made before, it was his first movie before Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
You can tell it's the same guy making the movie. There's things that are similar about them, but there's something about Pulp Fiction that was very different to everything else that was around at the time.
I mean, I don't think I've seen anything like this.
Really, and it's like, well, the only thing you will have seen like it will be another Tarantino movie, or someone subsequently pastiching or mimicking. So I think that it was very different, and like the cast, you got John Travolta, Bruce Willis, and it was like there was a lot of names, and well, actually, I mean, there were a couple of big names, and then people who went on to be really big names. Because
so when I watched this earlier this year, I was like, oh my gosh, the cast list is
not so much ridiculous. At the time.
Yeah, of course, and I didn't think about that when I was when I was watching it.
Yeah, so we'll have to delve deeper into it because we don't want to talk about it all now.
Interesting. No, we don't. We will talk about this more next week. We actually will talk about the film.
Yeah.
So tune in next week for some chats about Pulp Fiction. But for today, that's it. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.